The top is off of the Miata, and that can only mean one thing. Time to install a roll bar. Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and yes, that is right. Today we are putting a roll bar on the Miata. One of the key points I wanted to hit in this build was safety, and what better way to keep yourself safe than with a proper roll bar made by our friends down at Hard Dog. So let's take a look at what we got, and then we'll get into the install. And here it is, everybody. This is our Hard Dog Sport double diagonal with the integrated harness bar. I picked this one up on recommendation from the guys over at Hard Dog. He said he'd been racing these cars for a long time, and he's a similar height to me, and this is what he suggests for a hardtop Miata with somebody about 6 feet tall who's going to be doing some spirited driving. So one of the main things I wanted in this was the harness bar. So this was an upcharge, but it's well worth it because now I can loop my harnesses around and not have to compress my spine by doing something goofy like bolting them to the floor. Whenever I bought this Miata, it previously had it was a double deuce, I believe. It had the 2 hoops and then bars that would come down, except they were cut off. I'll go ahead and plug a photo here of what that car looked like with the bar. Anyways, that bar was compromised, the bars were cut. I threw that away several years ago and just cruised around with the hard top with nothing in here. It actually makes a nice storage area. But that's going away because we are putting in this proper roll bar, so let's get into the install. So before this roll bar can go in the car, there's several things we have to pull out, starting with the seats. I've already got those ripped out. We got something coming for that too. But for now, we're gonna start pulling out this interior and accessing the areas that we need to either cut away or drill through to get this bar installed. Okay, so the roll bar's kind of roughed in place. Got everything out of the way that I need. The rest of it's just some harness material. There's 2 bolts underneath each of the seat belts reels, I guess you'd call it. We're gonna bolt those in first. That's gonna be like our locator, and then we'll go through and drill the holes where they're needed. All right, so we've got a little bit of progress done on the bar. Right now I've just got it roughed in place. This took a lot of work. I don't know if it's just over the years, the chassis get a little bit tweaked and not all of them are perfect, but we did get it installed partially. And so that means we got the seat belt towers bolted in, as well as down here on the bottom alignment bolt holes. Now this one on the passenger side was especially difficult because the plate didn't sit down far enough to let the bolt hole go through. So probably against my better judgment, I took a Dremel and kind of grinded away some material so the bolt could shift down a little bit. And that did allow me to get both of these bolted in. And then on the top, these were pretty difficult to get to line up because you do use a spacer and there's a very long bolt and it's got to go down and hit the original chassis mounting hole. So what helped me was actually tightening down these all the way. Now you're supposed to leave these loose until you get further along in the process, but tightening it down all the way did pull the roll bar up against the chassis, and then I could get up here and pull back on this pretty hard, and it let me get these bolts started. So that did work for me. Now on to the fun part. We're gonna get the holes drilled out, get the plates mounted up, and then start getting this thing put back together. We went and got ourselves a right angle attachment for our drill so we can get these holes drilled as straight as possible. I could have done it without this. I'm sure I could have found a way to work around it, but I'd rather just get the right tool and do it right the first time. So spent a little money and got this overnetted from Amazon. So let's go ahead and get into it, finish this thing up. Now that we we got that, we can go ahead and drill our last bolt hole here. Let's get my evap line out of the way. This thing, you can just move it. Normally it gets plugged in. It's got a little thing that it notches into the frame and sticks up. You can just tuck this out of the way. So we got those done. I'm gonna get the other side and then we can move on to the easy ones, which are on the front of the fender wells. So I'm gonna set you guys down and I'll pick you back up once I'm done. Okay, so we've got the rear plates installed and torqued down. Now we can move to the forward ones, drill those out, do the same. Fortunately for us, this one's way easier and they're all just right here. Same thing as the rear mount ones. We're gonna put the bolt through first, and then on the other side, we're gonna do the washer and the lock nut. So moving on to the seat belts. Anybody who has been on Bethania's websites to look at the install guide for the hard dog roll bars would quickly find that there is a lot of information that is lacking on those install guides. Particularly with mounting the seat belts to the roll bar. This forward bolt is what we're going to be using, and fortunately for us, they do package it with the washers and bolts and stuff already in order. So from the top, we've got our bolt, our little dish type washer. It's got a recessed area in it. We've got a flat washer, this small metal spacer that goes through the seat belt, another washer for the bottom, and then the nut. So what makes sense to me is this washer and nut are going to go underneath. Everything else will go through the seat belts on top. The one thing they do show on their website is that you can grind out some of this webbing here to make it rotate more forward. However, where it lines up at, it wouldn't rotate anymore if I grinded that off. It's already hitting the side of the buckle here, so we're just going to leave it as is. And then just like the rest of our bolts, I'm going to tighten these down to 33 foot-pounds. And if we did this right, the stack should still rotate pretty freely even whenever it's torqued down. So that's what we want. Okay, so now we're going to move on to trimming more pieces. The first one is going to be the parcel shelf. So let me get that mounted in place and show you where I've cut. So the previous owner had cut out these slots for the deuce bar on both sides, and you can see where they went through up here. Now obviously you wouldn't need to cut anything like this, but the ones back here, I'm actually going to extend them out a little bit more just so we can still have this bolt hole remaining up here, and that should get us done. All right, so we've got our parcel shelf put in. You can see the additional cuts I made to fit around the roll bar here. And here is the driver's side. This is by no means super clean, and most of this isn't my work. I would have tried to do a little bit better than this, but it's what we're dealing with. I don't have another Miata to cut up, so this is what I'm cutting up. So the next part is going to be getting the bottom carpet in, and then the seatbelt tower trim, and then we'll go over how to trim those up to fit around the roll bar as well. Okay, get this all cleaned up now. Alright, so I've got the panels trimmed on the driver's side. I did a pretty good job on the outside panel. You see I got it to go right around the base plates here. It all worked out pretty well. The inside panel, you know, I could have trimmed that a little bit less. But what I think I'm going to do is go in here with some rubber trim, maybe some hose or something around this, and seal up that gap and make it look pretty nice. But overall, not too bad. I think it looks pretty good in here. You can see we got it mounted all the way around. We trimmed around the roll bar here. I wanted to keep as much of the factory plastic here as possible, just to make it look more factory. Now that we've got the carpet all reinstalled, we'll come down, get our seatbelt bolted back in, and then we'll retain full functionality on our seatbelt here. So it is hot in here. I'm just gonna go ahead and knock out the other side, and then I'll meet you guys once I'm finished. Quick little fitment here. I think we did a pretty good job on this. Now get the inside panel on. Alright guys, well the roll bar is in the car, and here we go. This is our seat of choice, a Sparco Sprint that I picked up for a steal on Marketplace. Now this one is a steel tube frame style seat. Now I was on the hunt for a Momo Start, as that is an FRP bucket seat, but this one just came up for a steal and I couldn't pass it up, and it's even better that it will still pass tech if I go to any race events. So let's get this thing thrown in the car on our planted seat brackets. Those are arguably the lowest mounting that you can get without cutting out some of the floorboard on these cars. So let's see how we sit in there. So those of you trying to fit aftermarket seats in your Miata, you might run into an issue here where you can't get the seat mount all the way over because the trans tunnel is in the way. So the solution, you gotta come to your toolbox and grab your trustiest tool and go to work on it. And there is our seat. Man, this has been by far the hardest thing I've ever had to install in a car. There's just absolutely no room to work on this. And of course, if it was a reclining seat, it would have been quick, done in an instant, but no, you're fighting with bolts that are just out of your reach or just out of the ability of your dexterity. But we persevered, and the Sparco seat is in, along with our Pyrotect harnesses. I still got to install the anti-submarine strap, the fifth one that's going to go through the floorboard. But overall, I think we're looking pretty good on safety. We got our roll bar, our seats, our harnesses. The last thing that's going to go in is our fire extinguisher. We're just going to get a mount here on the passenger side floorboard. Don't mind the mess. The car has just been a collection bin of parts and tools as I continue working on this thing in my spare time. Let's go ahead and get the hardtop put back on, see where our headroom is at, and we'll wrap it up. It's a little bit more spacious in here now, believe it or not, and I think we're going to have plenty of room here between our helmet and the roof, and definitely enough to pass that broomstick test, which is very important if you're going to be attending any track events. Alright guys, well that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for tuning in. Next time I see you, we'll be wrapping the build up, getting the engine reinstalled, so stay tuned for that. We'll see you then. Peace. How do I do this gracefully? You don't. Oh, good. Whew.